Jack Wilson froze mid-step, white lilies tumbling from his trembling fingers onto the Arlington cemetery grass. The whisper had come from behind Olivia's headstone, impossible, haunting, achingly familiar. A small face emerged, tear-streaked and framed by tangled blonde curls, blue eyes that mirrored his dead wife's staring up at him with unmistakable recognition. "Daddy? Mommy said you'd come find me." The girl's voice quavered, her tiny hand clutching a worn silver bracelet, the one Jack had given Olivia on their wedding day. Martha, the elderly groundskeeper, dropped her pruning shears with a clatter, crossing herself as she backed away. "Good Lord above!" The child's threadbare dress hung loose on her thin frame, but she stood with Olivia's characteristic straight-backed dignity, a ghost of mannerisms Jack had believed were buried forever. "Who are you?" Jack managed to whisper, his combat-trained composure shattered by 6 simple words from a stranger who somehow knew him. How could this child call him father when he'd left Olivia 6 years ago, told he could never have children? And why did her eyes hold both hope and terror? Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching. From now, let's continue with the story. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Arlington National Cemetery as Jack Wilson struggled to process what was happening. At 38, the former Marine had seen his share of impossible situations, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The small girl who called him Daddy continued to stare up at him, her eyes, Olivia's eyes, filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "My name is Emma," she said softly, her small voice steady despite her tears. "Mommy told me you might not know about me. She showed me your picture every night before bed." Jack knelt down, bringing himself to the child's level. His military training had taught him to remain calm in crisis, but his hands still trembled as he reached out, stopping just short of touching the girl's shoulder. "Emma," he repeated, the name unfamiliar yet somehow right on his tongue. "How old are you?" 6. "My birthday was last month." She twisted the silver bracelet on her wrist, the same bracelet he'd given Olivia on their first anniversary. It was sized down, modified to fit a child's arm. 6 years. The math aligned perfectly with when he'd walked away from Olivia after learning of his infertility, a diagnosis he'd received after an IED explosion during his last tour in Afghanistan. The doctors had been certain. The likelihood of him fathering a child was nearly 0. He'd left Olivia to give her a chance at the family she deserved with someone else. Jack lived alone now in a modest house in Falls Church, Virginia, working as a security consultant for government contractors. His life was ordered, predictable, and empty, until this moment. "Where do you live, Emma?" he asked, trying to keep his voice gentle. Around them, the cemetery remained eerily quiet, as if the world was holding its breath. "At Sunrise Haven, with Mr. Bradley and the other children." Her expression darkened. "But I don't want to go back. Mommy said if I found you, I wouldn't have to." Jack had never heard of Sunrise Haven, but the fear in Emma's eyes when she mentioned it set off warning bells honed by years in combat zones. Before he could ask another question, the sound of approaching footsteps on the gravel path made Emma stiffen. "Emma, there you are!" A tall man in an expensive suit approached, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "I've been worried sick." "Mr. Bradley," Emma whispered, instinctively stepping closer to Jack. The man's gaze shifted to Jack, assessing him quickly. "Thank you for finding her. Emma has a tendency to wander off. I'm Thomas Bradley, director of Sunrise Haven Children's Center." He extended his hand. Jack didn't take it. Something about Bradley's polished exterior felt wrong, like the too clean compounds in war zones that often hid the worst dangers. "Jack Wilson," he replied instead, rising to his full height. "Olivia's husband." Bradley's smile faltered for just a millisecond. So brief most wouldn't notice, but Jack had been trained to catch such tells. Ah, the ex-husband. I've read the file. I'm sorry for your loss, but I need to take Emma back now. As Bradley reached for Emma's hand, Jack noticed how she flinched away. In that small gesture, he made his decision. Actually, Jack said, we were just leaving to get something to eat. You're welcome to join us. The small diner just outside Arlington Cemetery seemed frozen in time, with its vinyl booths and faded photos of local heroes on wood-paneled walls. Jack sat across from Emma, a chocolate milkshake between them that she'd barely touched. Thomas Bradley had reluctantly joined them, his tailored suit looking out of place among the casual Sunday crowd of veterans and families. Emma, Jack said gently, can you tell me how you knew where to find me today? The girl glanced nervously at Bradley before answering. Mommy kept a special box. She showed me your picture and said if anything happened to her, I should find you at her special place on Sundays. Jack felt a chill run through him. Olivia had known he visited her grave every Sunday without fail, rain or shine. It had been their tradition when dating. Sunday was always their day, no matter what missions or shifts came up. Emma has an active imagination, Bradley interjected smoothly. Her mother's death was traumatic. The car accident happened just over a year ago. I wasn't aware of any accident, Jack said, keeping his voice steady despite the shock. No one had notified him of Olivia's death. He'd discovered it himself 3 months after the fact, when sending his annual letter to her last known address. Bradley dabbed his mouth with a napkin. You weren't listed as next of kin. I understand you two had been separated for some time. 6 years, Jack confirmed, studying Emma's face. Her eyes, Olivia's eyes, watched him intently. But I find it hard to believe Olivia would never mention having a daughter. Bradley's smile tightened. I'm sure she had her reasons. Now we really should be getting back. Emma has her therapy session this afternoon. Emma's hand shot out, grabbing Jack's wrist with surprising strength. I don't want to go, she whispered. Please. Bradley sighed as if dealing with a routine tantrum. Emma, we've talked about this. Your mother appointed me as your guardian in her will. The judge agreed it was best for you to stay at Sunrise Haven. Jack had interrogated enough people to recognize evasion. I'd like to see this will, he said. Of course, Bradley replied too quickly. Stop by Sunrise Haven tomorrow. We're an open book. As Bradley turned to signal the waitress for the check, Emma leaned forward, her voice dropping to a barely audible whisper. He's lying. Mommy never liked him. She said he hurts children. Jack maintained his neutral expression despite the alarm bells clanging in his mind. Years of military training had taught him when to show his hand and when to observe. This was definitely time for the latter. I'll drop by tomorrow then, Jack said casually as Bradley turned back. What time works best? Say 2 o'clock. We're in Alexandria, just off the GW Parkway. Bradley handed him a business card with an embossed gold logo. Sunrise Haven Children's Center, a new beginning. When they stood to leave, Emma suddenly wrapped her arms around Jack's waist, burying her face against him. The gesture, unexpected and desperate, broke something loose inside him. He gently patted her back, feeling how small she was, how fragile. It was nice meeting you, Emma, he said, loud enough for Bradley to hear. You too, Daddy, she replied deliberately, looking directly at Bradley as she said it. Bradley's jaw tightened momentarily before he took Emma's hand. Let's go, Emma. Mrs. Peterson is making your favorite dinner tonight. Jack watched them leave, noting how Bradley's hand gripped Emma's wrist rather than her hand, how her shoulders hunched as they walked away. Combat instincts honed in the worst parts of Afghanistan screamed that something was very wrong. The moment they disappeared from view, Jack threw cash on the table and headed to his truck. He didn't follow them directly. That would be too obvious. Instead, he drove to his small house in Falls Church, went straight to the spare bedroom, and opened the closet where he kept Olivia's things. The box contained all he had left of her: letters, photos, a few personal items she'd left behind. He dug through until he found their wedding album and began flipping pages until he found what he was looking for: a clear photo of Olivia's handwriting in their guest book. Jack compared it to the last letter he'd received from her 4 years ago. The distinctive way she formed her L's and crossed her T's was unmistakable, but most telling was how she signed her name, not Olivia but Liv, a nickname only he had used for her. Emma had called her mother Liv at the cemetery. Next, Jack turned on his laptop and searched for Sunrise Haven Children's Center. The website was professional, featuring smiling children, glowing testimonials, and photos of a beautiful facility with extensive grounds. Thomas Bradley featured prominently, founder, director, and recipient of several humanitarian awards. The center specialized in care for orphaned children, particularly those with special emotional needs. A separate search for Olivia Parker Wilson turned up her obituary from 14 months ago. Car accident on the coastal highway. No mention of a daughter, no mention of Jack. Something wasn't adding up. Jack reached for his phone and dialed an old number. "Mike, it's Wilson. I need that favor you offered when I pulled you out of that ambush outside Kandahar." After arranging for Mike, now a private investigator, to look into Sunrise Haven and Thomas Bradley, Jack drove to a 24-hour pharmacy and purchased a home DNA test kit. He wasn't sure how he would get Emma's DNA yet, but he needed to be prepared. As Jack pulled into his driveway, he noticed his elderly neighbor, Eleanor Matthews, watching from her porch. The 75-year-old former schoolteacher had a reputation for keeping tabs on everyone in the neighborhood. Jack normally avoided her, finding her questions intrusive, but tonight he raised a hand in greeting. "Late night, Jack?" she called out, voice carrying in the quiet street. "Just running errands, Mrs. Matthews," he replied. "Saw you at the cemetery again today?" she continued. "Someday you'll have to tell me about this Olivia of yours." Jack paused. "Maybe I will." Inside his house, Jack spread everything he knew across his kitchen table: the business card, the obituary, the letters, his marriage certificate, photos of Emma's face memorized from their brief meeting. If she really was his daughter, it would explain the familiar feeling he'd had looking at her, seeing his own chin, his mother's ears, combined with Olivia's striking blue eyes. But how could it be possible? The doctors had been clear about his infertility after the IED blast. That was why he'd left Olivia, to free her to have the family she deserved with someone else. The guilt of that decision had haunted him for 6 years. And yet, medical diagnoses weren't always absolute. Doctors had told him he'd never walk properly again after the blast, but 18 months of grueling physical therapy had proved them wrong. Jack reached for an old photo of Olivia taken in Afghanistan where they'd met. He a Marine sergeant, she a combat nurse. Her smile had been the one bright spot in that hellscape. They'd married 3 weeks after returning stateside. "What happened, Liv?" he whispered to the photo. "Why didn't you tell me about Emma?" Sleep eluded Jack that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Emma's face as Bradley led her away, the barely concealed fear, the silent plea for help. He'd seen that look before on the faces of children in war zones, children who had learned that adults couldn't be trusted to keep them safe. By morning, Jack had made his decision. He would visit Sunrise Haven as planned, but not as a concerned ex-husband. Thomas Bradley had been too smooth, too practiced. If Jack showed his suspicions, Bradley would simply shut him out. Instead, Jack would play the part of a man simply curious about his ex-wife's life, perhaps feeling guilty for not being there when she died. He would observe, gather information, and find out what Emma had meant when she said Bradley hurts children. Because if there was even a fraction of a chance that Emma was his daughter, that Olivia had kept this miracle from him, then nothing would stop him from discovering the truth. And if Thomas Bradley had done anything to harm either of them, Jack would ensure he paid for it. Not as a Marine this time, but as something far more dangerous. A father. Sunrise Haven Children's Center gleamed in the afternoon sun, its red brick facade and white columns projecting an image of traditional stability. Jack, dressed in pressed khakis and a button-down shirt, as close to business casual as his wardrobe allowed, approached the wrought iron gates with a carefully neutral expression. The security was what he noticed first. Not obvious, but present. Cameras disguised as decorative fixtures. Grounds too perfectly maintained to cross without being seen. A guard booth styled to look like a gardener's shed. It reminded him of diplomatic compounds he'd secured overseas. Places designed to look welcoming while remaining highly defensible. The receptionist greeted him with a practiced smile. "Mr. Wilson? Mr. Bradley is expecting you. Please sign in." Jack scrawled his name in the visitor's log, noting the heavy stock paper and embossed letterhead. Everything about Sunrise Haven spoke of money, serious money. "Jack, welcome." Thomas Bradley emerged from a hallway, today in a blue suit that probably cost more than Jack's monthly rent. "Thank you for being punctual. Military habit, I presume?" Jack accepted the handshake, matching Bradley's grip. "Old habits die hard." "Indeed. Follow me to my office and we can discuss your concerns." Bradley led him past a common room where children played under the watchful eyes of staff. Jack scanned for Emma, but didn't see her. "Where's Emma today?" he asked casually. "Art therapy. One of our many programs." Bradley gestured to framed children's artwork lining the hallway. "We provide comprehensive care here. Many of our children have experienced significant trauma." Bradley's office continued the theme of understated wealth. Leather furniture, degrees and awards on the walls, a large desk of polished mahogany. He indicated a chair for Jack. "Now, you wanted to discuss Olivia's will." Bradley pulled a file from a drawer. "I understand your confusion. Finding out about Emma must have been quite a shock." "You could say that," Jack replied, accepting the document Bradley handed him. The will seemed straightforward. Olivia Parker Wilson had appointed Thomas Bradley as Emma's guardian in the event of her death. There was her signature at the bottom, similar to what Jack remembered, but something felt off about the flourish on the finalin. "Did Olivia work here?" Jack asked, still studying the document. Bradley leaned back. "She volunteered part-time. That's how I came to know Emma. When the accident happened, there was no other family to take Emma, so the arrangement formalized." "I'm her family," Jack said quietly. Bradley's expression shifted to practiced sympathy. "Jack, may I call you Jack? You left Olivia 6 years ago. You weren't listed on Emma's birth certificate. Legally, you have no standing as her father." Jack kept his face impassive despite the surge of anger. "I'd like to see Emma." "Of course, we have nothing to hide." Bradley pressed an intercom button. "Patricia, please bring Emma to my office." While they waited, Jack glanced around the office, cataloging details. A photograph of Bradley with a senator. A plaque acknowledging donations from international corporations. A framed news article titled, "Sunrise Haven Expands International Adoption Program." A moment later, the door opened and Emma entered, accompanied by a stern-faced woman. The girl's face lit up when she saw Jack, though she quickly controlled her expression. "Hello, Mr. Wilson," she said formally, glancing at Bradley. "Hello, Emma," Jack replied, noting how different she seemed, subdued, cautious, like a soldier in hostile territory. "How are you today?" "I'm fine, thank you." She perched on the edge of a chair, hands folded in her lap. Bradley smiled. "Emma, Mr. Wilson wanted to see you. He knew your mother." Emma nodded without speaking. Jack noticed a small bruise near her wrist, partially hidden by her sleeve. "Emma's been making excellent progress," Bradley continued. "Haven't you, Emma?" "Yes, Mr. Bradley." Her voice was flat. Jack leaned forward. "I brought something to show you, Emma. Your mother and I were married here." He pulled out his phone, scrolled to a wedding photo. "See?" Emma's eyes widened as she looked at the screen. With deliberate care, she reached into her pocket and withdrew a folded paper, handing it to Jack. "I drew this for you." Jack unfolded it. A child's drawing of a woman with blonde hair standing by a car near what looked like a cliff. Red crayon marks surrounded the car. At the bottom she'd written, "Mommy," with an arrow pointing to the woman. "It's beautiful," Jack said, understanding the message. Emma didn't believe her mother died in an accident. "May I keep it?" Emma nodded, then glanced at the stern woman. "I have to go back to class now." "Of course," Bradley said smoothly. "Patricia, please take Emma to her art group." As Emma stood, she stumbled slightly, brushing against Jack. He felt something small slip into his pocket. He kept his expression neutral as Emma and Patricia left the room. "She's quite talented," Jack commented, carefully folding the drawing. "Indeed. We nurture creativity here," Bradley replied. "Now, about your concerns—" "Actually," Jack interrupted, "I appreciate your time, but I should be going. This has given me a lot to think about." Bradley seemed surprised by the abrupt conclusion, but recovered quickly. "Of course. Feel free to visit again. We maintain an open-door policy for anyone connected to our children." As they walked back toward the entrance, Jack noticed a hallway with a secured door. "What's down there?" "Administrative offices? Record-keeping. Nothing interesting," Bradley answered too quickly. "We maintain detailed files on all our children's progress." Outside in the parking lot, Jack waited until he was in his truck before reaching into his pocket. Emma had slipped him a hairbrush, small, plastic, with several strands of blonde hair caught in the bristles. Smart girl. The DNA test could now proceed. That evening, Jack carefully followed the instructions on the home DNA test kit, securing Emma's hair samples and his own cheek swab. He paid extra for expedited processing, using a credit card that couldn't be easily traced back to him. As he sealed the package, a knock at his door startled him. Through the peephole, he saw Eleanor Matthews, his elderly neighbor, holding a casserole dish. "I brought you dinner," she announced when he opened the door. "You never eat properly." "Military men never do." Jack hadn't expected this. "Thank you, Mrs. Matthews. That's very kind." She bustled past him into the house, looking around critically. "Still living like you might deploy any minute, I see. Not a single family photo." "I don't have much family," Jack replied, carefully sliding the DNA kit under some papers. Eleanor set the casserole on the counter. "So, who was the little girl you were talking to at the cemetery? I volunteer there on Sundays. Saw you with her." Jack hesitated. Eleanor was notoriously observant and equally talkative, but something in her direct gaze reminded him of his no-nonsense grandmother. "She might be my daughter," he admitted. "I'm trying to find out." Eleanor's eyebrows shot up. "Well, that's not what I expected. Sit down and eat while it's hot and tell me everything." To Jack's surprise, he did. Perhaps he needed to talk to someone, or perhaps Eleanor's grandmotherly demeanor broke through defenses that had withstood professional interrogators. He told her about Emma, about Olivia's death, about his suspicions regarding Thomas Bradley. "Sunrise Haven," Eleanor repeated, frowning. "I know that place. My friend Martha works in their kitchen. Always seemed too polished for a children's home, if you ask me." "Have you heard anything concerning about it?" Jack asked. Eleanor pursed her lips. "Martha mentioned children arriving and then suddenly leaving. International adoptions, they say. But it all happens very quickly." She studied Jack's face. "You really think this child is yours?" "I don't know," Jack admitted, but something's wrong at that place. Emma's afraid, and she's trying to tell me something about Olivia's death." Eleanor stood, gathering her purse. "Well, I'll ask Martha to keep her eyes open, and you keep me informed. I may be old, but I still know how to raise hell when necessary." After Eleanor left, Jack spread Emma's drawing on the table. The cliff, the car, the red marks like fire or blood. If Emma was suggesting Olivia's car accident wasn't an accident, he needed to investigate the circumstances of her death. The next morning, Jack drove to the county records office. He requested the accident report for Olivia Parker Wilson, cited as her ex-husband. The clerk was reluctant until Jack produced their marriage certificate, which he'd never filed to dissolve. The report was thin. Single vehicle accident on Coastal Highway 1. Car went over the cliff. Driver presumed to have lost control. Body recovered by Coast Guard. No other vehicles involved. No witnesses. Jack frowned. Olivia had been an exceptionally careful driver. Her father had been killed in a car accident when she was 12, leaving her with an almost obsessive attention to driving safety. He requested the medical examiner's report next. Cause of death: multiple traumatic injuries consistent with a high-velocity impact. Toxicology report: negative for alcohol, positive for trace amounts of diazepam, a mild sedative. Jack's frown deepened. Olivia didn't take sedatives. She'd always refused them, even during their divorce. As he left the records office, his phone rang. The DNA testing facility, calling days earlier than expected. "Mr. Wilson, we have your results. Given the circumstances you described, we expedited processing." Jack's heart pounded. "And?" "The probability of paternity is 99.9998%. You are, without question, the biological father of the child whose sample you submitted." The world seemed to tilt beneath Jack's feet. He leaned against his truck, struggling to process this information. Emma was his daughter, his and Olivia's miracle. The child he'd never thought possible. And she was in the custody of a man she feared, a man she believed had something to do with her mother's death. Jack's military training kicked in, focusing his thoughts. He needed legal advice. With the DNA results, he might have grounds to challenge Bradley's guardianship. He called the only lawyer he trusted, Sarah Lawson, who had helped several members of his unit with legal issues after deployment. "I need to see you today," he told her voicemail. "It's about a custody situation. Urgent." As he drove home, Jack passed Sunrise Haven. On impulse, he parked across the street, observing. A black SUV with diplomatic plates was pulling away from the main entrance. Jack noted the license plate number. His phone rang again, Sarah Lawson returning his call. "I can see you at 4, she said. "But Jack, custody battles are complicated, especially if you haven't been in the child's life." "I'll explain everything when I see you," Jack promised. After ending the call, Jack decided to drive by the scene of Olivia's accident. He needed to see it for himself. Coastal Highway 1 wound along cliffs that dropped sharply to the Atlantic. Jack found the approximate location from the accident report. There was nothing to mark the spot, no memorial, no skid marks, no damaged guardrail, just a dangerous curve with a stunning ocean view. Jack got out of his truck, examining the road. This particular stretch had a guardrail, unlike some other sections. For a car to go over, it would have needed significant speed to break through the barrier, or the barrier would have needed to be compromised beforehand. He knelt, examining the base of the guardrail. It had been repaired, but not particularly well. The new section was a slightly different color than the weathered portions surrounding it. As Jack stood, something glinted in the gravel near his foot. He bent down and picked up a small piece of metal, part of a broken headlight, judging by the curved glass still attached to it. But it wasn't from a standard car. The tint and thickness suggested a high-end vehicle, possibly European. Jack pocketed the fragment and returned to his truck, his suspicions growing darker by the minute. He needed to move quickly. If Bradley had been involved in Olivia's death, and if he suspected Jack was investigating, Emma could be in immediate danger. At 4 o'clock, Jack sat in Sarah Lawson's office presenting his evidence. The DNA test results, Emma's drawing, the accident report, and his concerns about Sunrise Haven. Sarah listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "This is serious, Jack. If what you suspect is true, this goes beyond a simple custody dispute." "I need to get Emma out of there," Jack insisted. "Not so fast," Sarah cautioned. "Bradley has legal guardianship regardless of the circumstances. We need to proceed carefully. If you attempt to remove Emma without court approval, you could face kidnapping charges." "So, what do I do? Leave her there while we navigate red tape?" Sarah tapped her pen against her legal pad. "We file for emergency custody based on the DNA results and your concerns for Emma's safety. But we need more evidence of actual danger or misconduct." Jack described the bruises he'd seen on Emma's wrist, Bradley's controlling behavior, and the suspicious circumstances of Olivia's death. "It's concerning," Sarah admitted, "but not enough for emergency removal. Judges are reluctant to disrupt a child's current placement without overwhelming evidence. So we need more proof," Jack concluded. "Yes, and we need it quickly." Sarah began drafting documents. "I'll file first thing tomorrow morning. In the meantime, don't do anything that could jeopardize our case." Jack nodded, though inside he was calculating how quickly he could gather the evidence they needed. Emma's safety couldn't wait for the grinding pace of family court. As he left Sarah's office, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Martha from Sunrise Haven here. Eleanor gave me your number. The little girl you asked about, Emma, is scheduled for international placement next week. Sunshine Project." "A very secretive. Thought you should know." Jack froze, reading the message twice. 1 week. They were planning to send Emma away in 1 week. The legal process could take months. Jack got into his truck, his mind racing. He had been trained to make impossible decisions under pressure, to weigh risks against objectives, to act decisively when necessary. Emma was his daughter. He was now certain Olivia had been murdered, and Bradley was planning to send Emma out of the country within days. The choice was clear. Jack would not wait for the courts. He would get his daughter out of Sunrise Haven tonight if possible. But first, he needed to understand exactly what he was up against. He texted back to Martha, "What is the Sunshine Project?" The reply came quickly. "Special international adoptions for very wealthy clients. No questions asked, no paper trail. Children just disappear. Human trafficking." The realization hit Jack like a physical blow. Not just a corrupt guardian, but a criminal operation disguised as a children's charity. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. This was about all the children at Sunrise Haven. Jack started his truck, his decision made. He would not be going through legal channels, not with his daughter's life at stake. As he pulled away from the curb, he didn't notice the black sedan that pulled out several cars behind him, matching his turns with professional precision. Jack's house seemed unnaturally quiet as he methodically prepared for what came next. On his kitchen table lay the tools of his former life, a small tactical flashlight, lock picks acquired during his security consultant days, a burner phone purchased with cash, and a notebook filled with his observations of Sunrise Haven's security systems. His phone buzzed. Sarah Lawson calling again. He let it go to voicemail. She'd been calling hourly since he'd texted that he was handling things his way. Jack knew she was trying to stop him from doing something that would jeopardize any legal case. But the legal system moved too slowly for what Emma faced. Martha from Sunrise Haven had sent more details. The Sunshine Project transferred children to wealthy overseas clients willing to pay exorbitant sums for American children with specific characteristics: blonde hair, blue eyes, high intelligence, no official adoption records, no trace of where the children went. Jack stared at the burner phone, weighing his next move. His instinct was to go in immediately, extract Emma, and deal with the consequences later. But the Marine in him knew better. Rushing in without proper intelligence would endanger not just himself, but Emma and potentially other children. Instead, he called Mike, his former squad mate who now worked as a private investigator. "I need surveillance on a vehicle," Jack said when Mike answered. "Diplomatic plates." He recited the number he'd seen at Sunrise Haven. "Give me an hour," Mike replied without questions. That was the brotherhood of combat. You didn't ask why when a fellow Marine needed help. While waiting, Jack drove to his storage unit where he kept the remnants of his military service. In a locked footlocker beneath old uniforms lay something he'd hoped never to use again: a set of night vision goggles forgotten during his discharge processing, and a combat knife that had saved his life in Kandahar. He wasn't planning violence, but Thomas Bradley was involved in something dangerous enough to kill Olivia. Jack wouldn't be caught unprepared again. Back at home, Eleanor Matthews was waiting on his porch, a determined expression on her weathered face. "Martha called me," she said without preamble. "This Sunshine Project is worse than we thought. Children go missing from the system entirely." Jack nodded grimly. "I'm working on it." "Working on it?" Eleanor scoffed. "That child is in danger now. In my day, we didn't wait for committees when a child needed help." "I'm not waiting," Jack assured her. "But I need to be smart about this. Bradley has connections, powerful ones. If I move too soon, I could lose any chance of getting Emma out safely." Eleanor studied him, her shrewd eyes taking in the barely concealed tension in his stance. "You were important in the military, weren't you? Not just a regular soldier?" Jack didn't answer directly. "I was in Marine Force Recon. We specialized in intelligence gathering and complicated situations." "Well, use those skills then." Eleanor handed him a folded paper. Martha drew a layout of Sunrise Haven, including the restricted areas. "She says they keep the children's files in Bradley's office safe. The code is Emma's birthday, 06/12/15. Jack unfolded the paper, surprised by the detailed floor plan. "How did Martha get this?" "She's worked there 15 years. Sees everything, that woman." Eleanor's expression hardened. "She's been suspicious for years but had no proof. Then Olivia started asking questions about missing children, and suddenly she died in that accident." Jack felt his blood run cold. "Olivia was investigating them?" "According to Martha, yes. Olivia volunteered there after you left, started noticing patterns, children arriving, then suddenly being transferred with minimal paperwork. She was gathering evidence." Eleanor's voice lowered. "The week before she died, Olivia gave Martha something to hide, said it was insurance." "What was it?" Jack asked urgently. "Martha doesn't know. It's sealed in a safety deposit box at First Virginia Bank on Main Street. Olivia arranged for Martha to have access." Jack checked his watch. "The bank's closed now. Opens at 9 tomorrow." Eleanor stood. "I'll have Martha meet you there. And Jack, be careful. Bradley has friends in high places. Martha says judges, police captains, even a state senator have adopted through the Sunshine Project." After Eleanor left, Jack's phone rang, Mike with the information on the diplomatic vehicle. It belonged to the Kuwaiti embassy but was registered to a private foundation called Global Children's Initiative. The foundation had donated $3 million to Sunrise Haven last year. "The driver's interesting," Mike continued. "Ex-military contractor with a sketchy history. Did some wet work for private companies in Iraq. Name's Decker." "Thanks," Jack said. "I owe you." Just be careful, brother. These people don't play by the rules. Jack spent the rest of the evening studying Martha's floor plan of Sunrise Haven, planning entry and exit routes, memorizing the security camera positions she'd marked. If the files were as damning as he suspected, they might be enough to get Emma out legally, or at least expose Bradley's operation if the legal system failed. The next morning, Jack met Martha at First Virginia Bank, a thin, nervous woman in her 60s with quick eyes that missed nothing. "You look like your picture," she said when he approached. "Olivia kept it in her desk drawer, showed it to Emma sometimes, told her you were a hero." Jack felt a pang at the thought of Olivia preserving his memory for their daughter, even after he'd left. "Thank you for helping us." Martha nodded briskly. "I should have done something sooner. Too scared of losing my job." Benefits aren't easy to find at my age. Inside the bank, Martha presented her ID and the safety deposit box key. The manager escorted them to a private room where Martha opened the box and handed Jack a sealed manila envelope. "She made me promise to give this only to you if anything happened to her," Martha explained. Inside the envelope, Jack found a USB drive, a handwritten letter, and several photographs. The photos showed Bradley meeting with well-dressed men near expensive cars. One photo captured money changing hands. Another showed a child being escorted to a private jet. The letter was in Olivia's handwriting, dated just 10 days before her death. "Jack, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I know it's been years since we spoke, but you're the only one I trust with this. Thomas Bradley is running a child trafficking operation through Sunrise Haven. The Sunshine Project sells children to wealthy foreign buyers who can't adopt through legal channels, people with criminal records, known abusers, even suspected pedophiles. I've been gathering evidence, which is on the enclosed drive. I'm taking it to the FBI next week. There's something else you need to know. We have a daughter, Emma. The doctors were wrong about your infertility. I discovered I was pregnant after you left. I tried to find you, but you disappeared into deployment. I know you left because you thought you were giving me a chance at the family I wanted. The irony is that you gave me that family already. Emma has your smile, your determination. She's perfect, Jack. I've told her about you, showed her your picture. If anything happens to me, find her. Protect her. Bradley knows I'm on to him, and I've arranged for Emma to stay with my friend Clara if things go wrong. I never stopped loving you. Liv." Jack read the letter twice, his hand shaking. Olivia had tried to find him. She'd wanted him to know about Emma, and Bradley had killed her for what she knew. Martha watched him anxiously. "Is it what you needed?" "Yes," Jack said, his voice rough with emotion. "More than enough. What will you do now?" "Take this to Sarah Lawson, my attorney. Then to the FBI." Jack carefully placed everything back in the envelope. "But first, I need to make sure Emma is safe." Martha twisted her hands worriedly. "You should know. Emma's international placement was moved up. They're processing her paperwork today. The transfer is scheduled for tomorrow night." Jack felt his heart drop. "Tomorrow? Are you sure?" "Bradley changed it yesterday, after your visit." Martha's implication was clear. Bradley suspected Jack was investigating and was accelerating Emma's removal. "I need to get her out now," Jack said firmly. "You can't just walk in and take her," Martha warned. "Security's tight and Bradley rarely leaves the building lately." "I'm not walking in the front door," Jack assured her. "But I need your help. Can you get Emma a message from me?" Martha nodded. "I'm working the dinner shift tonight. What should I tell her?" "Tell her her father is coming for her tonight. Tell her to be ready." Jack thought for a moment. "And tell her to remember the Morse code for SOS if she needs to signal me." That afternoon, Jack met with Sarah Lawson, showing her Olivia's evidence. The attorney's professional composure cracked as she reviewed the USB drive's contents. financial records showing millions flowing through shell companies, correspondence with wealthy foreign clients specifying the requirements for children they wanted, and most damning, a list of officials who had received consultation fees to look the other way. This is, Sarah struggled for words, this is organized crime, Jack. Human trafficking at the highest level. I need to get Emma out tonight, Jack told her. They're transferring her tomorrow. Sarah nodded, abandoning her earlier caution. This changes everything. I'll contact a federal judge I trust for an emergency order, but it might take time. If you can get Emma safely, do it. This evidence justifies your concerns. What about the other children? I'll work on that too. The FBI needs to see this immediately. Sarah began making calls. Go get your daughter, Jack. I'll handle the legal fallout. As Jack left Sarah's office, he felt eyes on him. Glancing around the parking lot, he spotted a black sedan idling at the corner, the same model he'd glimpsed following him earlier. Someone was watching his movements. Instead of heading home, Jack drove to a crowded shopping mall, using counter-surveillance techniques to lose any tail. He switched vehicles with Mike, who had agreed to let Jack borrow his truck for the night. By sunset, Jack was parked in a wooded area near Sunrise Haven, observing through binoculars. Security seemed heightened, more guards than he'd noticed during his visit, additional cameras installed at blind spots Martha had identified in her floor plan. His burner phone vibrated with a text from Martha. Message delivered. Girl understands. Bradley suspicious, checking all exits. Diplomatic visitor arrived 20 minutes ago. Jack frowned. The timing couldn't be coincidence. The diplomatic visitor was likely connected to Emma's transfer. He might already be too late. As darkness fell, Jack moved through the woods to Sunrise Haven's eastern perimeter, where Martha had indicated a maintenance door with less surveillance coverage. The night vision goggles gave him a clear view of the grounds, 2 guards patrolling, motion sensors on the main pathways, but a gap near an old oak tree where branches obscured the camera's view. Jack waited patiently, timing the guards' rotations. At precisely 11:42 p.m., he made his move, staying in the camera blind spots Martha had identified. The maintenance door's lock yielded to his picks within seconds. Inside, Jack found himself in a utility corridor dimly lit by emergency lights. He moved silently, following the memorized floor plan toward the administrative wing where Bradley's office was located. A soft tapping sound stopped him mid-step. It was coming from a door to his right. 3 short taps, 3 long, 3 short, SOS in Morse code. Jack tried the door, locked, but the lock was simple, designed to keep children in, not intruders out. It clicked open under his skilled hands. Inside, Emma sat on a narrow bed, fully dressed with a small backpack beside her. Her eyes widened at the sight of him. "Daddy?" she whispered, running to him. "You came." Jack hugged her tightly, his heart racing with a mixture of relief and urgency. "I promised I would. We need to be very quiet now, okay?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Mr. Bradley has a bad man here. They were talking about me." "What did they say?" Jack asked, checking the hallway before guiding Emma out. "The man wants to take me on a plane tomorrow, to a place far away." Emma clutched Jack's hand. "I don't want to go." "You won't?" Jack promised. "We're leaving now. But first, can we get something from Mr. Bradley's office? Mommy's special box? She showed it to me once." Jack hesitated. The priority was getting Emma to safety, but if there was additional evidence in Bradley's office, "It's dangerous," he warned. "Mommy said it was important for the other children." Emma's expression was determined beyond her years. "It's in his safe." "I know the code." Jack made a quick decision. "Lead the way, but stay behind me." They moved silently through the hallways, Jack constantly alert for security. Emma proved remarkably stealthy, clearly having mapped escape routes during her time at Sunrise Haven. Bradley's office was locked, but Jack made quick work of it. Inside, Emma pointed to a painting of Bradley with a prominent politician. Behind there, Jack carefully moved the painting, revealing a wall safe. "You know the code?" Emma nodded. "Mommy's birthday, 04/22/82. The safe opened on the first try. Inside lay several folders labeled Sunshine Project and a smaller box. Emma pointed to the box. "That one." Jack took everything, stuffing the folders into his jacket and the box into a cargo pocket. "Time to go." As they turned to leave, voices approached from the hallway. Bradley and another man. "Papers are all prepared. The Sheik is very pleased with your selection. Blue eyes were specifically requested." "The payment has been confirmed?" Bradley's voice asked. $2 million, as agreed. Transfer complete by noon tomorrow." Jack pulled Emma into a concealed alcove behind a bookshelf just as the office door opened. Through a narrow gap he could see Bradley and a hard-faced man in an expensive suit. "The child is secured?" the man asked. "Of course. Mild sedative in her dinner. She'll be compliant for transport." Bradley moved toward the safe. "I'll get the final documentation." Jack felt Emma tense beside him. He squeezed her hand reassuringly, preparing for the moment Bradley discovered the safe had been opened. Bradley turned the painting aside, then froze. "What the—" He spun toward his companion. "The safe is open! Check the girl's room, now!" The man reached inside his jacket, revealing a shoulder holster. Jack's combat instincts took over. As the man rushed from the room, Jack whispered to Emma, "Stay here. Don't move until I come get you." Emma nodded, eyes wide but trusting. Jack slipped from the alcove the moment Bradley's back was turned. One precisely applied sleeper hold later, Bradley slumped unconscious to the floor. Jack used zip ties from his pocket to secure Bradley's hands and feet, then gagged him with a handkerchief. The armed man would return soon. Jack retrieved Emma, guiding her toward a different exit than they'd planned, the loading dock Martha had marked as a secondary escape route. They were halfway there when alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Bradley's companion must have discovered Emma missing. "Change of plans," Jack murmured, lifting Emma into his arms. "Hold on tight." He sprinted down the corridor toward the nearest exit, a fire door that would trigger additional alarms but couldn't be locked due to safety codes. Bursting through it, Jack carried Emma across the darkened grounds, staying in the shadows of the building. Shouts erupted behind them. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. A voice on a radio. "Perimeter breach! Secure all exits!" Jack set Emma down behind a maintenance shed. "See those woods? We're going to run there as fast as we can. Don't stop for anything, understand?" Emma nodded, her small face determined. "I'm ready, Daddy." They made it halfway across the open ground before the first shot rang out. Jack instinctively shielded Emma with his body, pulling her behind a decorative boulder. "Stay down," he ordered, assessing their situation. 3 men with flashlights were advancing from the building. The armed man from earlier stood by the fire exit, pistol raised. "Wilson," the man shouted, "return the girl and you walk away. This doesn't have to get messy." Jack didn't respond. Instead, he pointed Emma toward a drainage ditch that ran along the property edge. "Follow that all the way to the big tree. I'll be right behind you." "Promise?" Emma whispered. "Promise. Now go. Don't look back." As Emma slipped away, Jack moved in the opposite direction, deliberately making noise to draw attention away from her. The tactic worked. Flashlights swung toward him, and 2 guards broke into pursuit. Jack led them on a chase through the grounds, using his military training to stay just ahead while ensuring they remained focused on him. Meanwhile, Emma should be reaching the perimeter by now. The armed man was smarter, though. He'd held his position, scanning methodically. Jack saw the moment he spotted movement near the drainage ditch, Emma's small form reaching the property edge. The man raised his weapon, taking aim at the child. Jack abandoned all pretense of stealth. He charged directly at the gunman, closing 40 yards in seconds. The man turned, startled, and fired too hastily. The bullet whistled past Jack's ear. Before he could fire again, Jack tackled him to the ground. The gun skittered away as they grappled. The man was skilled, military-trained, Jack assessed. But Jack was fighting for his daughter. With a decisive move, he rendered the man unconscious. Scooping up the fallen weapon, Jack sprinted for the perimeter. Emma had reached the tree line but stopped, looking back anxiously. "Run, Emma!" Jack shouted, seeing more guards converging. He reached her seconds later, lifting her into his arms again as they plunged into the dense woods. Behind them, flashlights probed the darkness, but the pursuers were hesitant to follow into unfamiliar terrain at night. Jack didn't slow until they were a quarter-mile into the forest, following a path only he could see through his night vision goggles. Finally, they reached the location where Mike's truck was hidden. "We made it," Jack said, helping Emma into the passenger seat. "You were very brave." Emma's smile was tentative but real, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "Mommy said you were a hero, that you saved people." Jack secured her seatbelt with trembling hands. "Your mom was the real hero. She tried to save all those children." As they drove away, Jack called Sarah on the burner phone. "I have Emma." "And more evidence from Bradley's safe." "Thank God," Sarah replied. "Where are you heading?" "Somewhere safe. Bradley's people are armed and dangerous. They'll be looking for us. I've spoken to the FBI. They're taking this seriously, but they need time to build a case. The level of corruption Olivia uncovered goes deep." "We don't have time," Jack said, glancing at Emma, who had fallen asleep against the door. "Bradley has connections everywhere. No official location will be safe." "What are you thinking?" Sarah asked. "I have a place. Off the grid. I'll contact you when we're secured." "Be careful, Jack. Bradley's not the only one looking for you now. I had visitors at my office, federal agents, but they weren't FBI. They were asking very specific questions about you and Emma." Jack frowned. If other government agencies were involved, the situation was even more complex than he'd thought. "I'll be in touch," he promised, ending the call. As they drove through the night, Jack periodically checked for tails, taking random turns and backtracking to ensure they weren't followed. Emma slept peacefully beside him, exhausted from their escape. Jack studied her face in the dashboard lights. Olivia's features blended with his own. His daughter. The miracle he'd never known existed until 3 days ago. They arrived at their destination just before dawn, a small cabin deep in the Virginia mountains that Jack had purchased under an LLC after leaving the Marines. No one knew about it except Mike, who had helped renovate it. No paper trail connected it to Jack Wilson. As the sun rose over the mountains, Jack carried the still sleeping Emma inside, laying her gently on the cabin's single bed. He covered her with a blanket, then sat in a chair beside her, the folders and box from Bradley's safe on his lap. Whatever came next, Jack knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would protect his daughter with his life. Bradley and his network would have to go through him to get to Emma, and as anyone who had faced Jack Wilson in combat could attest, that was a deadly proposition. Emma woke with a start, her small body tensing before she registered the unfamiliar surroundings of the cabin. Morning light filtered through dusty windows, casting golden rectangles across the worn wooden floor. Jack watched as awareness returned to her eyes, first confusion, then memory, and finally cautious relief. "We got away," she said, her voice still thick with sleep. "We did," Jack confirmed, setting aside the documents he'd been reviewing all night. "How are you feeling?" Emma considered this seriously, as if conducting an internal inventory. "Hungry. And my arm hurts where Mr. Bradley grabbed me yesterday." Jack's jaw tightened at the mention of Bradley, but he kept his voice gentle. Let's take care of both those things. I've got some breakfast food and a first aid kit for your arm." The cabin was sparse but functional. A main room with a kitchenette, a small bedroom, and a bathroom with a shower that produced lukewarm water at best. Jack had stocked it with essentials and non-perishable food, part of his ingrained military preparedness that had once seemed paranoid but now felt prescient. While Emma ate cereal at the small table, Jack examined the bruises on her arm, finger marks where Bradley had gripped her too tightly. He took photos with his burner phone, documenting the abuse while fighting to control his rage. "Does he hurt other children too?" Jack asked carefully, applying antiseptic to a small cut. Emma nodded, spooning another bite of cereal. "Some more than others. The special ones get treated better." "Special ones?" "The ones for the Sunshine Project. They need to look perfect." She said this matter-of-factly, unaware of how disturbing it sounded coming from a 6-year-old. "I was special because of my eyes. Blue is the most expensive." Jack felt sick. The folders he'd taken from Bradley's safe confirmed Emma's innocent explanation. Children were categorized by physical attributes, intelligence and temperament, like products in a catalog. Prices ranged from $500,000 to $3 million, with detailed shipping arrangements to countries where adoption regulations were lax or easily circumvented. After breakfast, Jack needed to assess their situation. The cabin was secure for now, remote enough that Bradley's people wouldn't find it easily, but they couldn't stay indefinitely. Eventually, supplies would run low, and Emma needed proper care, not a life on the run. "Emma, I need to make some calls to people who can help us. While I do that, would you like to draw? I found some paper and pencils." Emma nodded eagerly, settling on the floor with the art supplies. Jack stepped onto the small porch, keeping the door ajar to watch her while he called Sarah. "We're safe," he told the attorney when she answered. "What's happening with the FBI?" Sarah's voice was tense. "It's complicated. They've opened an investigation, but Bradley has powerful friends. Someone's trying to control the narrative, painting you as an unstable veteran who kidnapped a child." "That's absurd. I have DNA proof she's my daughter." "I know, but Bradley's claiming you forged the results. He's filed kidnapping charges, Jack. There's a multi-state search underway." Jack watched Emma through the doorway as she concentrated on her drawing, her small face serious. "What about Olivia's evidence? The files from the safe?" "That's where things get interesting. The FBI agent I spoke with, Agent Rivera, believes the evidence is credible, but she's facing internal resistance. Someone high up is trying to bury this." "The diplomatic connection," Jack muttered. "Bradley's selling American children to foreign nationals with diplomatic immunity. That creates international complications." "Exactly. Rivera wants to meet you, off the record. She thinks there's a faction within the Bureau that's been investigating Bradley for months, but they've been stonewalled." Jack weighed the risks. "I can't bring Emma into a potential trap." Rivera suggested a neutral location, the old fire tower at Shenandoah Ridge. "Tomorrow at dawn. Just you, not Emma." "Who vouches for Rivera?" "Mike ran a background check. She's legitimate. 20 years with the Bureau, spotless record, specialized in human trafficking cases." Jack made his decision. "Tell her I'll be there, but I'll be watching the approach for an hour beforehand. First sign of a setup, I'm gone." After ending the call, Jack rejoined Emma inside. She held up her drawing proudly, a detailed rendering of a large building with multiple rooms. With a chill, Jack recognized Sunrise Haven's layout, including areas he hadn't seen. "This is very good," he said carefully. "Is this where you were staying?" Emma nodded. "I marked where the bad things happen." She pointed to a section labeled Special Rooms in childish handwriting. "New children go here first. Sometimes they cry a lot." Jack studied the drawing with growing horror. Emma had mapped not just the main facility but underground areas not shown on Martha's floor plan. Rooms labeled photos and training suggested activities far more sinister than childcare. "Emma, how do you know about these rooms? Were you ever taken there?" She shook her head. "Not me. But I heard things, and sometimes I followed Mr. Bradley when he didn't know. I'm very quiet." There was a hint of pride in her voice. "Mommy taught me to be a spy. She said it was our secret game." Olivia had been training their daughter to gather intelligence, Jack realized, preparing her, perhaps, for the possibility that she wouldn't be able to protect Emma herself. "What's in the special box we took?" Emma asked, changing subjects with childlike directness. Jack retrieved the box from Bradley's safe. It was small, metal, with a simple clasp rather than a lock. Inside was a single USB drive, different from the one Olivia had left in the safety deposit box, and a handwritten note in Olivia's writing. "Insurance. Original footage. Unedited." "I think it's more of Mommy's evidence," Jack explained, "about the bad things Mr. Bradley was doing." Emma nodded solemnly. "Mommy said if anything happened to her, I should find you and give you her special things. She said you'd know what to do because you're a hero." Jack swallowed hard, undeserving of such faith. He hadn't been there when Olivia needed him. He hadn't known about Emma. Some hero. "Your mom was the real hero," he told Emma. "She was trying to save all the children." Emma's small hand found his. "Now you can finish her mission." For the rest of the day, Jack assessed their resources and planned for various contingencies. If the meeting with Agent Rivera went well, they might have FBI protection. If not, they would need to disappear more permanently, perhaps to Canada, where Jack had contacts from joint military operations. He reviewed the additional files from Bradley's safe, finding a list of clients that included prominent businessmen, minor royalty from oil-rich nations, and even a U.S. congressman. No wonder someone was trying to bury the investigation. The scandal would be unprecedented. Most disturbing was a schedule of upcoming transfers, 6 children slated for delivery over the next month. Emma had been next on the list, scheduled for transfer to someone identified only as Kuwait Client Number 3 for the sum of $2.1 million. As evening approached, Jack heated canned soup for dinner. Emma ate quietly, occasionally glancing at him with an expression that reminded him painfully of Olivia, thoughtful, assessing, seeing more than she let on. "Are you really my daddy?" she asked suddenly. "For real?" Jack set down his spoon. "Yes, the DNA test proved it." "What's DNA?" "It's like special information in your body that comes from your parents. Half from your mom, half from your dad. It's why you have my chin and your mom's eyes." Emma touched her chin consideringly. "Mr. Bradley said my daddy was dead. That's why I had to go with the new family." "Mr. Bradley lied about a lot of things," Jack said, keeping his anger from his voice. "Why didn't you live with me and Mommy?" The question hit Jack like a physical blow. How could he explain to a 6-year-old the complex mix of fear, misplaced nobility, and avoidance that had led him to walk away from Olivia? "I didn't know about you," he said finally. "After I was hurt in the war, doctors told me I couldn't have children. I left because I thought your mom deserved someone who could give her a family." "But she had me," Emma pointed out with flawless child logic. "Yes, she did. The doctors were wrong. If I'd known about you, I would have come back immediately." Emma absorbed this, then delivered her verdict. "That was a silly mistake." Despite everything, Jack found himself smiling. "Yes, it was. The silliest mistake I ever made." After dinner, the practical problem of sleeping arrangements arose. The cabin had only one small bedroom with a double bed. Jack prepared to sleep on the couch, but Emma looked alarmed at the separation. "Can't you stay with me? I don't want to be alone." Jack recognized the fear behind her request. After everything she'd been through, being alone in a strange place was frightening. "Of course, I'll be right there." That night, Jack lay awake beside his sleeping daughter, listening to her steady breathing. The responsibility he felt was overwhelming. Just days ago, he'd been alone, existing rather than living. Now, this small person depended on him completely. Outside, a twig snapped. Jack was instantly alert, hand reaching for the weapon he'd placed beside the bed. Years of combat had honed his senses. That wasn't an animal. Someone was approaching the cabin. Moving silently, Jack eased off the bed without waking Emma. He crept to the window, staying to the side to avoid being silhouetted. In the moonlight, he could make out a figure moving through the trees, then another, at least two people approaching with the deliberate stealth of professionals. How had they found the cabin? Jack mentally reviewed his actions since the escape. He'd used Mike's truck, avoided highways, paid cash for supplies. The only people who knew this location were Mike and Sarah. Unless someone had followed Mike here in the past or tracked Sarah's phone during their conversations, Jack moved quickly, gathering essentials into a backpack: water, food, the evidence from Bradley's safe. Then he gently woke Emma. "Sweetheart, we need to go," he whispered. Very quietly. To her credit, Emma asked no questions, instantly alert. Jack helped her into her shoes and jacket, then led her to the cabin's rear window, a tight fit for him but easy for her small frame. "I'll go first, then help you down," he whispered, easing the window open. Outside, the intruders were approaching the front door, still unaware they'd been detected. Jack slipped through the window, dropping silently to the ground, then reached up for Emma. She came through smoothly, like they'd practiced this 100 times. Jack set her down, put a finger to his lips, then pointed toward the dense woods behind the cabin. Emma nodded her understanding. They moved quietly into the forest, just as flashlight beams appeared around the cabin's front corners. Jack caught a glimpse of tactical gear, professional operators, not local police. Leading Emma deeper into the woods, Jack followed a small game trail he'd noted earlier. His plan was to circle back to where he'd hidden a second vehicle, an old Jeep registered to yet another alias, as a backup escape route. They had covered about 200 yards when a shout came from the cabin. Their absence had been discovered. "Run," Jack whispered to Emma, lifting her into his arms to move faster through the difficult terrain. Behind them, lights bobbed as their pursuers gave chase. Jack heard radio communications, crisp, professional, military style. "Target is mobile, moving northwest with the package. All units converge." Not local police, not even FBI. These were private contractors, the kind Jack had worked alongside in combat zones. Bradley had connections to serious people with serious resources. Jack changed direction, moving downhill toward a stream he'd noted on his area reconnaissance. Water would mask their trail, and the sound of flowing water would cover noise. Emma clung to him silently, her face buried against his shoulder. Despite her fear, she wasn't crying or panicking, showing remarkable composure for a child her age. They reached the stream, and Jack set Emma down. "We need to walk in the water for a while. It'll be cold, but it will hide where we went. Can you be brave?" Emma nodded, taking his hand as they stepped into the icy water. They waded downstream for nearly half a mile, the cold numbing their feet but effectively eliminating any trail. When Jack judged it safe, they exited on a rocky bank that wouldn't show footprints. The hidden Jeep was still a mile away, across difficult terrain in the dark. Jack carried Emma when the ground became too rough, but let her walk when possible to conserve his strength. They were within sight of the concealed vehicle when a figure stepped out from behind a tree directly in their path. Jack pushed Emma behind him, reaching for his weapon when the figure raised empty hands. "Jack Wilson." I'm Agent Diana Rivera, FBI. The woman's voice was low, controlled. I know I'm early for our meeting, but things escalated. Bradley's people tracked you here. Jack kept his weapon ready. Prove you're Rivera. She slowly reached into her jacket and produced a badge and ID. Sarah Lawson gave me this location. She said to tell you Eleanor vouches for me. Eleanor, his elderly neighbor who had been helping him. That was a detail only the real Sarah would know to include. Those men back there aren't FBI, Jack said, still wary. No, they're private security contractors. Bradley has connections to a defense firm called Centurion. They're here to retrieve Emma and eliminate the evidence. Rivera glanced at the backpack Jack carried. You have the files from Bradley's safe? Jack nodded. And a USB drive Olivia labeled Insurance. Rivera's expression tightened. We need to get you both to safety now. My team has a secure location prepared. Your team. I thought this was off the record. It was. Until an hour ago when we received authorization for a full operation. Bradley slipped up, tried to bribe the wrong person. We have a small window before his political connections can interfere. The sound of pursuit was growing closer. Men moving efficiently through the forest, closing in on their position. My vehicle is just ahead, Jack said, making his decision. Follow us. They reached the concealed jeep, and Jack quickly removed the camouflage covering. As he helped Emma into the passenger seat, a shot rang out, splintering a tree trunk inches from his head. Get down! Rivera shouted, drawing her weapon and returning fire. Jack shielded Emma with his body, reaching for the ignition. The jeep roared to life as more shots peppered the area around them. Agent Rivera! Jack called. Go! She shouted back, still exchanging fire with the unseen attackers. I'll hold them off. Main highway, then north to the Red Barn. My team will find you! Jack hesitated only a second before accelerating away, tires spitting dirt and gravel. In the rearview mirror, he saw Rivera take cover behind a fallen log, still firing methodically at their pursuers. Daddy? Emma's voice was small, frightened. Is the lady going to be okay? She's FBI, sweetheart. She knows what she's doing, Jack assured her, hoping it was true. They bounced along the rough forest track, headlights off to avoid giving away their position. Jack navigated by moonlight and memory, pushing the jeep to its limits over the uneven terrain. A sudden explosion illuminated the night behind them, a flash and boom that echoed through the valley. Jack's heart sank. That wasn't gunfire. Someone had used a grenade or other explosive. What was that? Emma asked, eyes wide. I don't know, Jack answered honestly, accelerating harder. They reached the main highway 10 minutes later, Jack constantly checking for pursuit. He turned north as Rivera had instructed, watching for the red barn that would mark their rendezvous point. 5 miles later, they spotted it, an old structure set back from the road. As Jack approached cautiously, 3 black SUVs emerged from behind the barn, positioning themselves in a defensive formation. Men and women in tactical gear took up positions, weapons ready. One stepped forward as Jack stopped the jeep, hands visible on the steering wheel. Jack Wilson, the agent called. Agent Rivera sent us. Is the child with you? Yes, Jack answered, still cautious. Where's Rivera? The agent's expression was grim. We lost contact with her 10 minutes ago. Extraction team is en route to her last position. Jack felt Emma's small hand slip into his. The trust in her touch was a burden and a gift. Whatever happened next, he would not let her down. What now? He asked. Now we get you both to a secure location. And we bring down Thomas Bradley and everyone connected to the Sunshine Project. The agent's eyes flicked to the backpack beside Jack. With your help, Jack stepped out of the jeep, lifting Emma into his arms. As agents surrounded them in a protective formation, he made a silent promise to Olivia. Her fight would not be in vain. Her daughter would be safe, and the truth, no matter how ugly, no matter how far-reaching, would finally come to light. The safe house was a colonial-style home tucked away in rural Maryland, surrounded by fields and a perimeter of FBI agents. Inside, Emma slept fitfully on a twin bed in an upstairs bedroom, exhausted from their night of running. Jack sat beside her, unwilling to leave her alone even as the FBI team downstairs analyzed the evidence he'd provided. 3 days had passed since their narrow escape from the cabin. 3 days of debriefings, of Emma being gently questioned by child psychologists, of Jack recounting everything he knew about Thomas Bradley and Sunrise Haven. Agent Rivera had survived the explosion but remained hospitalized with serious injuries. She'd been targeted specifically, the FBI believed, because she was getting too close to the truth. A soft knock at the door drew Jack's attention. Agent Keller, the team lead, entered quietly. "How is she?" he asked, nodding toward Emma. "Nightmares," Jack replied, his voice low. "She keeps asking when we can go home." Keller's expression tightened. "That's actually what I came to discuss. We've hit a roadblock, Wilson." Something in his tone put Jack on alert. "What kind of roadblock?" "Political. Someone's blocking our warrant for Bradley. We've got your testimony, the files, even Emma's account, but—" Keller looked genuinely frustrated. "A federal judge just denied our request to raid Sunrise Haven, cited insufficient evidence and diplomatic complications." "That's impossible," Jack said. "The files from Bradley's safe are explicit. Children being sold, I know. But the judge claims the files could be fabricated, and your entry into Sunrise Haven was illegal, making any evidence obtained potentially inadmissible." Keller ran a hand through his thinning hair. "We're appealing, but it takes time. Meanwhile, Bradley's attorneys are pushing hard for Emma's return." Jack felt his blood run cold. "Return? She's my daughter." "The DNA. They're challenging the DNA results, claiming tampering. Bradley's legal team submitted emergency motions this morning. They're good, Wilson. Very good. And they have Judge Collins in their pocket." "Collins?" The name was familiar. "The same judge who signed off on Bradley's guardianship of Emma in the first place?" Keller nodded grimly. "The very same. He's issued a temporary order returning Emma to Bradley's custody pending investigation of your abduction of her." Jack stood, fists clenched. "That's not happening." "We're fighting it," Keller assured him. "But you need to be prepared. If the order is upheld, we'd legally have to comply." "And send my daughter back to a child trafficker?" "No." Jack's voice was deadly quiet. "I've followed your rules. I've trusted the system. But I will not sacrifice Emma to bureaucracy and corruption." Keller studied him. "What are you suggesting?" "You know exactly what I'm suggesting. If the legal system fails, we go outside it. That's a dangerous road, Wilson, for both of you." Jack gestured to the sleeping child. "Look at her, Keller. Really look. Those bruises on her arms. From Bradley. The nightmares. From watching other children disappear. Olivia died trying to protect her and expose Bradley. I won't dishonor that sacrifice." Keller was silent for a long moment. "The USB drive you recovered, the one Olivia labeled insurance, our tech team can't access it. It's encrypted beyond our standard capabilities. And if it contains what we think it might, unaltered footage of the operation, it could bypass the evidentiary issues. Direct evidence isn't subject to the same exclusionary rules as derived evidence." Jack understood the implication. "You need the password. We've tried everything associated with Olivia, with Emma, with Sunrise Haven. Nothing works." Jack looked at his sleeping daughter, remembering what Emma had said. "Mommy taught me to be a spy. She said it was our secret game." Olivia had been preparing Emma, teaching her things a 6-year-old shouldn't need to know. "Have you asked Emma?" Keller blinked. "She's 6, Wilson. She's also Olivia's daughter. And mine." Jack moved to the bed, gently waking Emma. "Sweetheart, I need to ask you something important." Emma rubbed her eyes, immediately alert in that way Jack had come to recognize, the vigilance of a child who's learned to expect danger. "Is something wrong?" "No, but we need your help. Remember the special box we took from Mr. Bradley's office? There's something inside that could help all the children, but we can't open it." Emma sat up. "The insurance?" "Yes. Did Mommy ever tell you about a special password or code for her insurance?" Emma thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. "She said if anything bad happened, I should tell the heroes about the rainbow." "The rainbow?" Keller asked, confused. Emma looked at him with the patience of a child explaining something obvious to an adult. "The rainbow has 7 colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. First letters spell Roy G. Biv. That's the key," Mommy said. Jack and Keller exchanged glances. It was too simple, too obvious, which made it brilliant. No sophisticated password-cracking algorithm would try a children's mnemonic device. "Let's try it," Keller said, gesturing to the laptop he'd brought upstairs. When they entered Roy GBIV, the drive immediately unlocked, revealing dozens of video files meticulously organized by date. Keller opened the most recent one, and the screen filled with crystal-clear footage of Thomas Bradley in his office, speaking to a well-dressed Middle Eastern man. "Guaranteed documentation, new identity, complete secrecy," Bradley was saying. "The girl matches your specific requirements exactly. Blue eyes, blonde hair, above average intelligence." "And health records?" the man asked, his accent slight but discernible. "All included. She's had every vaccination, perfect dental health, worth every penny of the 2 million. "And the mother?" Bradley's expression hardened. "No longer a concern. A tragic accident last year. The coast road can be so dangerous in the rain." Jack felt his chest constrict. Here it was, Bradley essentially confessing to Olivia's murder. Keller was already on his phone. "Get me Director Hayes. Now, tell him it's about Sunrise Haven, and we have direct evidence implicating Bradley in murder and human trafficking." Within an hour, the safe house transformed into a command center. FBI agents streamed in with equipment setting up in the living room as they reviewed Olivia's footage. The videos were damning. Bradley meeting with wealthy foreign clients, discussing children like commodities, explicit conversations about bribing officials, and most crucially, multiple references to arranging Olivia's accident. Director Hayes himself arrived by helicopter shortly after midnight, a tall, imposing man with a reputation for incorruptibility. He reviewed the key evidence, then turned to Jack. "Mr. Wilson, I owe you an apology. This case has been systematically obstructed at multiple levels. That ends tonight." "What about Judge Collins's order?" Jack asked. "Superseded by federal warrant, which I've just personally obtained from the Supreme Court Justice on call. Collins himself is now under investigation." Hayes checked his watch. "The raid on Sunrise Haven begins in 3 hours. We move just before dawn." Jack felt the first glimmer of hope in days. "I want to be there." Hayes studied him. "Normally, I'd refuse. But you know the facility, and you've earned the right. You'll remain with the second team, well behind the entry team. Agent Keller will be your handler." As preparations continued downstairs, Jack returned to Emma, who had fallen asleep again. He sat beside her, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a future, a real home, school mornings, birthday parties, normal things that had seemed impossibly distant just days ago. "We're going to be okay," he whispered, smoothing her hair. "I promise." At 4:30 a.m., Jack joined the FBI convoy, leaving Emma in the care of a child psychologist and 2 agents at the safe house. The drive to Sunrise Haven took 40 minutes, conducted in tense silence. Tactical teams checked weapons and communications. Jack, wearing a bulletproof vest with "Observer" emblazoned across it, was briefed on exactly where to stay and when to move. They assembled a mile from Sunrise Haven, dozens of agents and local police coordinating their approach. Director Hayes addressed the group briefly. "This is not just about rescuing children. This is about exposing a network that has operated with impunity, protected by money and influence. Every person in this facility has rights, including due process. We do this by the book. No exceptions." The raid began with precision at 5:15 a.m. Tactical teams approached from all sides, breaching entries simultaneously. Jack remained with Keller at the command post, listening to the radio traffic. "East entrance secured. West wing clear. Moving to dormitories. 6 children located in north wing. Safe and accounted for. Director, Bradley is not in his quarters. Repeat, primary target is not on site." Jack felt a chill. Bradley had been tipped off. Keller was already on it. "All units be advised, Bradley may have fled. Check all auxiliary buildings, underground areas, and transportation facilities." For 30 tense minutes, teams searched every corner of Sunrise Haven. They found 23 children total, documentation of dozens more who had been transferred overseas, and 3 staff members who surrendered immediately. But Thomas Bradley was gone. As Jack followed Keller through the now secured facility, he was struck by how different it looked in the harsh morning light, with FBI agents cataloging evidence. Less like a prestigious children's home and more like what it truly was, a processing center for human trafficking. In Bradley's office, agents had already opened the hidden wall safe, removing additional files. The painting that had concealed it, Bradley with a prominent senator, now seemed like a taunt, a reminder of the connections that had protected him for so long. "Sir," an agent called to Keller, "you need to see this." On Bradley's computer, they found an email sent just hours earlier. "Package secure. Proceeding with contingency alpha. Cleanup initiated." Jack's blood ran cold. The safe house. Emma. Keller was already reaching for his radio when all communications suddenly failed. Jammers, Jack realized. Someone was blocking their signals. Without waiting for authorization, Jack ran for the exit, Keller close behind. They reached the command vehicle as Director Hayes was organizing a response to the communications failure. "Bradley knew about the raid," Jack said breathlessly. "The message on his computer, he's going after Emma." Hayes immediately grasped the implications. "How?" "The safe house location is compromised," Keller interrupted. "Someone inside your organization is working with Bradley." Hayes' expression hardened. "Satellite phones. Now? And get me a direct line to the safe house team." But the call to the safe house went unanswered. Hayes dispatched a helicopter immediately, with Jack and Keller on board. The 15-minute flight was the longest of Jack's life, every second stretching as he imagined what might be happening to Emma. From the air, they could see the problem immediately. 2 black SUVs were parked haphazardly in front of the safe house, and the front door stood open. As the helicopter circled, they spotted bodies on the lawn, the FBI agents who had been guarding the perimeter. The helicopter landed in the adjacent field, and Jack was running before the skids fully touched down, weapon drawn. Keller and the tactical team followed, approaching the house in standard breach formation. Inside, they found devastation. The FBI agents and the psychologist lay dead in the living room, professionally dispatched with single shots to the head. The house had been ransacked, equipment destroyed, and Emma was gone. Jack stood in her empty bedroom, staring at the rumpled sheets where she had slept. On the pillow lay her small backpack, torn open, contents scattered. A child's drawing peeked out, Emma's rendering of herself and Jack standing together, "My daddy," written in careful letters beneath his figure. He picked it up with trembling hands as Keller entered the room. "Jack, I'm sorry. We'll find her. Every resource." "Bradley took her," Jack said, his voice hollow. "This is my fault. I trusted the system. I should have taken her and disappeared when I had the chance." "We'll find her," Keller repeated. The email mentioned Contingency Alpha. "We're analyzing Bradley's files for any reference to that." Jack barely heard him. His mind was already shifting, military training taking over, emotion giving way to cold calculation. Bradley will try to leave the country with her. Private airfield or marina, somewhere with minimal security. "He has diplomatic connections, false documentation. We're covering all transit points within 200 miles, Keller assured him, but Jack knew it wouldn't be enough. Bradley had planned for this contingency, had resources and connections they couldn't match. By the time the FBI worked through proper channels, Emma could be anywhere in the world. "I need to make a call," Jack said. "Alone." Keller hesitated, then nodded, stepping outside. Jack pulled out his personal phone, not the FBI-issued one, and dialed a number he'd memorized years ago but never used. "Anchor Point," said the voice that answered. "Black Tide Authorization, Wilson, JT Marine Force Recon, ID 873291, Jack responded, using a protocol he'd hoped never to invoke. "I'm calling in all markers." A pause. "Verified. Parameters?" "Child extraction. Domestic operation. High-value target with federal protection and foreign assets. Time critical." "Understood. Uplink coordinates and target details." "Response team activating." Jack ended the call, knowing he had just crossed a line. The markers were favors owed by former Special Operations personnel who had formed a private network after leaving service, people who operated in the shadows, outside official channels, people who could do what the FBI could not. What he had just initiated was illegal, potentially treasonous. But as Jack looked down at Emma's drawing, he knew he would burn the world to ashes if that's what it took to bring her home. When Keller returned, Jack's expression was unreadable. "I need access to Bradley's complete file. Everything you have on his properties, associates, habits." If Keller suspected anything, he didn't show it. "Follow me. The team has set up a command post downstairs." As they descended the stairs, Jack caught sight of himself in a hallway mirror. The man who looked back was not the solitary veteran who had visited his wife's grave less than a week ago. This was someone else entirely. A father who had found something worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth killing for. For the first time since learning of Olivia's death, Jack felt a terrible clarity of purpose. Bradley had taken everything from him, his wife, his chance to know his daughter, and now Emma herself. There would be no mercy this time, no trust in the system, no rules of engagement, only a promise, made silently to the daughter who had recognized him instantly at her mother's grave. "I will find you, and nothing on earth will stop me." 48 hours had passed since Emma's abduction. Jack sat in a nondescript hotel room 10 miles from Andrews Air Force Base, surrounded by maps, surveillance photos, and dossiers. The television murmured in the background, news coverage of the FBI raid on Sunrise Haven, talking heads speculating about the scope of the child trafficking network, politicians expressing outrage while carefully avoiding mention of their own connections to Thomas Bradley. Jack barely registered any of it. His focus remained absolute, trained on the intel gathered by his former teammates, men who had once served alongside him in the darkest corners of Afghanistan and Iraq, who now operated in the shadowy world between military contracting and private security. They had mobilized within hours of his call, tapping resources that even the FBI couldn't access. The door opened and Mike entered, looking exhausted but grimly satisfied. "We've got him." Jack looked up sharply. Where? Private airstrip in southern Delaware. One of his shell companies owns a hangar there. Mike spread satellite photos on the table. Bradley's smart. He's using multiple decoys. 3 identical convoys left his backup properties in the last 12 hours, heading in different directions. But our thermal imaging picked up a child-sized heat signature at the Delaware location. Security? 8 men, former military contractors, well armed. They're waiting for something, probably transport. Our sources at Air Traffic Control confirm a private jet filed a flight plan from there to Kuwait, departing at 2 a.m. Jack checked his watch, just over 4 hours. The FBI? Mike's expression hardened. Still compromised. Bradley has someone high up. We intercepted communication suggesting an FBI team is being deliberately misdirected to Norfolk. By the time they realize their mistake, Bradley will be in international airspace. Jack studied the airstrip layout. A single hangar, perimeter fence, 2 access roads, minimal lighting, remote location, designed for discretion, not defense. What about the diplomatic angle? Could they claim immunity if stopped? They're trying. Bradley's traveling with a Kuwaiti cultural attaché who's actually Sheikh al-Nazari's personal representative. The Sheikh has been Bradley's biggest client, 6 American children in the last 3 years, all adopted through irregular channels. Jack felt sick. 6 children, sold like property to a man wealthy enough to make international law bend to his will. What's our team status? 4 operators in position, conducting close surveillance, 2 more on standby with equipment. All former Tier 1, all with personal reasons to hate child traffickers. Mike's voice dropped. We're ready when you are, Captain. Jack hadn't heard that rank in years, but it felt right in this moment. This was a military operation in all but name. Planning, intelligence, precision execution. The objective? Extract Emma Wilson alive. Secondary objective? Ensure Thomas Bradley never threatened another child. The FBI will try to stop us if they find out, Jack said. Mike nodded. Keller suspects something. He's been asking questions about your old unit, making calls to Pentagon contacts. Keller's a good man. He's just playing by rules that Bradley doesn't recognize. Jack turned back to the maps. We move at midnight. 4-man entry team. 2 on perimeter security. Non-lethal approach unless they escalate. And Bradley? Jack was silent for a moment. Bradley is mine. As Mike left to finalize preparations, Jack allowed himself a moment of doubt. Everything he'd worked for in his post-military life, the quiet redemption, the careful rebuilding, he was risking it all. If this went wrong, he'd spend the rest of his life in prison. But the alternative was unthinkable. Emma, his miracle child in the hands of the man who had murdered her mother. Emma, terrified and alone, being transported to a foreign country where American laws couldn't protect her. There was no choice at all. Jack picked up his phone when it rang, expecting Mike again. Instead, it was Eleanor Matthews, his elderly neighbor. They came to my house, she said without preamble, her voice shaking with indignation rather than fear. Men in suits asking questions about you, showing badges but not letting me see them properly. Very impolite. FBI? Jack asked. No, these weren't law enforcement. Too smooth, too practiced. One had an accent, Eastern European, I'd say. I served tea and played the confused old lady while they searched my house. Jack felt a chill. Are you safe now? Of course. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. But Jack, they knew things. Asked about your visitors, your schedule. Someone's been watching your house for months. This confirmed Jack's suspicions. Bradley's operation was sophisticated, with surveillance on potential threats, including the ex-husband of a woman who had been investigating them. Eleanor, I need you to stay with your sister for a few days. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Already packed, she said briskly. Martha's coming with me. But before I go, there's something you should know. That morning I brought you casserole. I noticed a small device under your kitchen table, a listening device. I didn't mention it then because I wasn't sure who had placed it." Jack closed his eyes briefly. That explained how Bradley had known about the safe house. He'd been listening all along. "Thank you, Eleanor. Stay safe. You bring that little girl home, Jack Wilson. And when you do, I expect to meet my honorary granddaughter properly." The call ended, and Jack returned to his preparations with renewed focus. Bradley had been watching him even before Jack knew Emma existed. The game had been rigged from the start. At 11:30 p.m., Jack met with the full team at an abandoned warehouse 5 miles from the airstrip. 6 men, all former special operations, dressed in black tactical gear with no identifying markings. Equipment was minimal but specialized: encrypted communications, night vision, non-lethal options where possible. "Bradley is likely keeping Emma close," Jack briefed them. "Consider any room with additional security to be her probable location. She's 6 years old, blonde, blue eyes. She knows me, and she's smart enough to stay quiet during extraction." "Rules of engagement?" asked Harris, a former Delta operator. "Defensive only until we have Emma secured. Then we disappear. Separate vehicles, predetermined routes, no communications for 24 hours. Jack met each man's eyes. "What we're doing is illegal. Anyone who wants to walk away can do so now, no questions asked." No one moved. "Then let's bring her home." They moved out in 2 nondescript vans approaching the airstrip from different directions. Satellite imagery had identified blind spots in the perimeter security, allowing them to infiltrate without triggering alarms. Jack and 3 operators approached the hangar from the east, using a drainage ditch for cover. Through night vision, Jack could see 4 guards patrolling the perimeter, professional, alert, but following predictable patterns. Inside the hangar, lights burned despite the late hour. "I count 8 heat signatures inside," Harris murmured through the comm. 6 adult-sized, 1 smaller, likely the girl, and 1 indeterminate. "Positions?" Jack asked. "Main area has 4 adults. Back office has 2 adults and the smaller signature. Last signature is near what looks like a private bathroom." Jack processed this. "Emma's in the back office. Bradley will keep her close." They waited for the patrol to pass, then moved to the hangar's side entrance. The lock yielded to specialized tools in seconds. Inside, they found themselves in a small storage area filled with aviation equipment. Voices drifted from the main hangar, men speaking casually about the upcoming flight, discussing fuel requirements and weather conditions. Ordinary conversation masking an extraordinary crime. Jack signaled the team to hold position while he advanced to assess. Through a crack in the storage room door, he could see 4 men in the main hangar area, pilots and ground crew, not security. They were focused on flight preparations, unaware of the infiltration. The back office was visible across the hangar floor, a glass-walled space with blinds partially drawn. Jack caught glimpses of movement inside but couldn't clearly identify occupants. He retreated to the team. "We cross to the office on my signal. Non-lethal takedown of anyone who interferes. Priority is reaching Emma." The team nodded, readying specialized weapons, tranquilizer guns and stun devices designed to incapacitate without permanent injury. Jack had insisted on this approach. Emma had witnessed enough violence. When the ground crew moved to the aircraft for pre-flight checks, Jack gave the signal. The team moved swiftly across the hangar floor, staying in shadows where possible. They were halfway to the office when a guard emerged from the restroom, spotted them, and reached for his weapon. Harris fired first, a tranquilizer dart that caught the man in the neck. He collapsed with minimal noise, but the momentary disturbance was enough to alert those in the office. The blinds suddenly closed completely and raised voices became audible. "Move now," Jack ordered, abandoning stealth for speed. They reached the office door just as it locked from inside. "No time for finesse," Jack signaled to Harris, who attached a small breaching charge to the door handle. "Fire in the hole," Harris whispered into the comm, and everyone turned away as the charge detonated with a controlled bang, destroying the lock mechanism. Jack was through the door first, weapon raised. The scene inside burned into his memory in fragments. Bradley behind a desk, phone in hand, face contorted with rage. A large man, the Kuwaiti representative, standing by a private door, hand reaching inside his jacket, and Emma, pale, frightened but alive, sitting in a chair too large for her small frame, a stuffed animal clutched to her chest. "Daddy!" she cried when she saw Jack. Bradley recovered quickly. "This is a federal crime, Wilson. Kidnapping, assault." "Shut up," Jack said, his voice deadly calm. "Emma, come here, sweetheart." The Kuwaiti drew his weapon, but Harris was faster. A tranquilizer dart struck the man's shoulder, and he crumpled to the floor. Bradley reached for a drawer, but Jack was on him in 2 strides, seizing his wrist and slamming it against the desk edge. "Don't!" Emma ran to Jack, wrapping her arms around his leg. "I knew you'd come." "Always," Jack promised, keeping his weapon trained on Bradley. "Harris, get her out. Primary extraction plan." Harris holstered his weapon and gently took Emma's hand. "Hey there, little one. Your dad asked me to take you somewhere safe. Is that okay?" Emma looked up at Jack questioningly. He nodded. "Go with him, Emma. I'll be right behind you." She seemed to understand the unspoken message in his eyes. "Promise?" "Promise." As Harris led Emma out, Jack heard the sounds of brief conflict in the main hangar, his team neutralizing the remaining security. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Emma would be safe soon, transported to a secure location where Bradley's network couldn't reach her, leaving Jack alone with the man who had destroyed his family. Bradley's composure cracked as he realized his predicament. "You're making a terrible mistake, Wilson. Do you have any idea who I'm connected to? The people who will come after you?" "I know exactly who you're connected to," Jack said, lowering his weapon, but not his guard. "I've seen the evidence Olivia gathered, the client list, the payoff records, the videos." Bradley paled slightly but recovered. "Circumstantial and irrelevant once I'm in Kuwait. Diplomatic immunity is a wonderful thing." "You really think you're getting on that plane?" Jack asked quietly. "What are you going to do? Kill me, an unarmed man? That's not who you are, Captain Wilson. Your service record shows a man of principle, honor." Jack felt a cold certainty settle over him. Bradley had researched him thoroughly, believed he understood him. But the man Bradley had studied, the decorated Marine, the rule follower, that man had died the moment Jack learned what had happened to Olivia. "You're right," Jack said, holstering his weapon. "I'm not going to kill you." Bradley's relief was palpable but short-lived. "I'm going to make sure you face justice," Jack continued. "Every child you sold, every family you destroyed, every law you broke, all of it, exposed in court for the world to see." From his pocket, Jack withdrew a small recording device, one of several he'd placed around the office during their confrontation. "Including your implicit confession about Olivia's accident." Understanding dawned in Bradley's eyes, followed by genuine fear for the first time. "You can't." "I already have." Jack activated his comm. "Package secured. Target acquired. Phase 2. The office door opened, and FBI agent Keller entered, followed by 2 tactical agents. Bradley stared in confusion as Keller nodded to Jack. "Well done, Wilson. Excellent work drawing him out." Keller turned to Bradley. "Thomas Bradley, you are under arrest for kidnapping, human trafficking, conspiracy to commit murder, and a dozen other charges my team is still cataloging." As the agents handcuffed Bradley, Keller explained quietly to Jack, "We've been tracking your team since you contacted your old unit. I figured you were planning something like this." "And you let it happen?" Jack asked, surprised. "Let's just say I created a window of opportunity. Your team gets Emma out safely. My team makes a legitimate arrest with Bradley caught in the act of attempting international flight with a kidnapped child." Keller's expression was carefully neutral. "Sometimes justice needs a little unofficial assistance." Bradley was raging now, all pretense of sophistication gone. "This is entrapment. My attorneys will—" "Your attorneys are being arrested as we speak," Keller interrupted. "Along with Judge Collins, 2 state officials, and a very nervous congressman. The FBI director personally ordered the operation after reviewing Ms. Parker's evidence." "It's over, Bradley." As Bradley was led away, Jack felt a complex wave of emotions. Relief that Bradley would face justice, vindication for Olivia's work, but most of all, overwhelming gratitude that Emma was safe. "Where is she?" he asked Keller. "Your team delivered her to our secondary location as planned. She's with a child psychologist now, but she's asking for you." Keller handed Jack a set of car keys. "Black SUV outside. Agent Ramirez will take you to her." Jack nodded his thanks, too exhausted for words. As he turned to leave, Keller added, "For the record, Wilson, I don't know anything about any unofficial team that might have breached this location before we arrived. The official report will show that an anonymous tip led us to Bradley as he attempted to flee the country." Their eyes met in silent understanding. Keller was protecting him, ensuring that Jack's role in the operation wouldn't prevent him from being with Emma. "Thank you," Jack said simply. "No, thank you, for reminding some of us why we took this job in the first place." Keller's expression softened slightly. "Go be with your daughter, Wilson. She's waited long enough for her father." Outside, the night air felt cleaner somehow, as if a toxic cloud had dissipated. Jack breathed deeply, letting the adrenaline drain away, replaced by bone-deep weariness and something else, a cautious, fragile hope. Agent Ramirez drove in silence, respecting Jack's need to process. They arrived at a small, unmarked building on the outskirts of Dover, a safe house similar to the one Bradley's men had breached, but with significantly more security visible. Inside, Emma sat at a kitchen table, a female agent gently helping her draw pictures. When she saw Jack, she launched herself across the room into his arms. "You kept your promise," she said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "Always will," Jack replied, holding her as if she might vanish again if he let go. The female agent quietly excused herself, leaving father and daughter alone. "The bad men won't come back?" Emma asked. "No, sweetheart. Mr. Bradley and his friends are going to jail for a very long time." Jack brushed hair from her forehead, noticing dark circles under her eyes. "Did they hurt you?" Emma shook her head. "They just told me to be quiet. Mr. Bradley said I was going on a trip to meet my new family." Her small face hardened with a determination that reminded Jack painfully of Olivia. "I told him you were my family." He didn't like that. Jack felt a surge of fierce pride. "You're very brave, Emma, just like your mom." At the mention of Olivia, Emma's expression grew solemn. "Is Mommy in heaven?" "Yes," Jack said gently. "And she'd be so proud of you." Emma considered this, then asked the question Jack had been dreading. "What happens now?" It was the question that had haunted him through the frantic search. The desperate rescue. What came after? He had no experience as a father, no idea how to create a normal life for a traumatized child, but looking into Emma's eyes, Olivia's eyes, Jack knew there was only one possible answer. "Now we go home," he said, "together." Emma studied his face with that unnervingly perceptive gaze. "Forever?" "Forever," Jack promised. It might take some time to figure everything out, but we'll do it together. That's what families do." Emma nodded, apparently satisfied. She leaned against him, small body relaxing as exhaustion finally overcame her. Within minutes, she was asleep in his arms, trusting him completely to keep her safe. Jack held her, marveling at how someone so small could be so resilient. In less than a week, his solitary existence had been transformed. The emptiness that had defined his life since leaving Olivia, the void he'd tried to fill with work, with routine, with mere survival, was gone. In its place was something both terrifying and wonderful. A future with his daughter, a chance to be the father he never thought he could be, an opportunity to honor Olivia's memory by raising the child they had created together. As dawn broke outside the safe house windows, Jack made another silent promise, not just to protect Emma, but to give her the life she deserved. A life with laughter and security, with birthday parties and school projects, with all the ordinary joys that had been denied her. A life where she would never again have to wonder if her father was coming to find her, because he had found her, and he was never letting go again. 3 months later, Jack stood in the doorway of Emma's bedroom, watching as she carefully arranged stuffed animals on her newly decorated bed. The room, once his sparse home office, now exploded with color, walls painted sky blue, ceiling dotted with glow-in-the-dark stars, bookshelves filled with stories about brave princesses and adventurous girls. "Is Mr. Whiskers supposed to go next to Bunny, or should they be separated?" Jack asked seriously, referring to the ongoing soap opera of Emma's stuffed animal kingdom. Emma considered this with equal gravity. "They had a fight yesterday, but I think they've made up now." She placed the cat and rabbit side by side, then stepped back to assess her work. Perfect. These ordinary moments still caught Jack off guard, their precious normalcy a stark contrast to the chaos that had brought them together. The legal aftermath of Bradley's arrest had been intense, but mercifully straightforward. With DNA evidence confirming Jack's paternity and Bradley facing multiple federal charges, the courts had quickly granted Jack full custody. Thomas Bradley himself now awaited trial in a federal detention center, his operation dismantled, his political protectors scrambling to distance themselves from the scandal. The international adoption pipeline had been exposed, resulting in diplomatic tensions with several countries, but more importantly, the identification of 17 children who had been sold through the Sunshine Project. Recovery efforts were ongoing, coordinated by a task force Agent Keller now led. "Daddy," Emma called, pulling Jack from his thoughts. "Can we have pancakes for dinner, with blueberry faces?" "That sounds suspiciously like breakfast food," Jack replied with mock seriousness. "Ms. Eleanor says rules about when to eat certain foods are silly inventions." Emma had clearly been taking philosophical guidance from Jack's elderly neighbor, who had appointed herself honorary grandmother and part-time babysitter. "Well, if Ms. Eleanor says so, who am I to argue? Pancakes it is." In the kitchen, Emma perched on a stool to help mix batter, her tongue poking out in concentration as she carefully measured flour. These small domestic rituals had become sacred to Jack, evidence of the new life they were building together. The road hadn't been entirely smooth. Emma still had nightmares about Sunrise Haven, still checked twice that her bedroom door was unlocked, still sometimes woke calling for her mother. The child psychologist they visited weekly assured Jack these were normal responses to trauma and would fade with time and stability. Jack had his own adjustments to make. His security consulting work now took place exclusively from home, his clients understanding of his new priorities. He'd learned to navigate school enrollment forms, pediatrician appointments, and the complex social dynamics of playdates. The bathroom cabinet now contained detangling spray and colorful hair clips alongside his shaving kit. Most challenging was learning to talk about Olivia, keeping her memory alive for Emma without drowning in his own regret. They had created a special corner in the living room with photos of Olivia, where Emma sometimes left drawings or flowers. Together they visited Olivia's grave weekly, no longer a place of solitary grief, but a family ritual of remembrance. As Jack flipped pancakes, the doorbell rang. Emma immediately stiffened, a reflexive response to unexpected visitors that lingered from her time at Sunrise Haven. "It's okay," Jack assured her. "Probably just Agent Keller. He mentioned stopping by today." Sure enough, Keller stood on the porch, looking more relaxed than Jack had ever seen him in civilian clothes. The FBI agent had become a regular visitor, initially for case-related matters, but increasingly as something resembling a friend. "Something smells good," Keller commented as he entered. "Pancakes for dinner?" Emma announced proudly. "With blueberry faces." "Excellent choice." Keller set his briefcase on the counter. "Mind if I talk to your dad for a minute, Emma? Boring, grown-up stuff." Emma nodded sagely. "I'll set the table. You can stay for pancakes if you want." When she moved to the dining area, Keller lowered his voice. "Bradley's taking a plea deal. 25 years minimum. No possibility of parole until he's served at least 20. Jack absorbed this. "Not life?" "In exchange for names. Everyone involved in the network, including overseas clients." Keller's expression was grim but satisfied. "The task force has already recovered 3 more children based on his information. The department felt it was worth the reduced sentence." Jack glanced at Emma, carefully placing forks beside plates. "I understand. The other children matter too. There's more." Keller opened his briefcase, removing an official-looking document. The court awarded damages from Bradley's estate and the Sunrise Haven Foundation. It's being divided among the families of affected children, with a significant portion in a trust for Emma. Jack scanned the figure and felt momentarily lightheaded. The amount would cover Emma's education through graduate school, with plenty left over. "Olivia would be pleased," Jack said quietly. "She always worried about providing for Emma's future." Keller nodded. "One last thing. We've closed the investigation into your unorthodox extraction operation." Officially, Emma was rescued solely by FBI personnel acting on an anonymous tip. The weight of potential criminal charges, the final shadow hanging over their new life, lifted. Jack extended his hand. "Thank you." "No need. Some rules exist to be bent when necessary." Keller glanced at Emma. "Besides, I've developed a vested interest in this particular happy ending." Later, after pancakes had been devoured and Keller had departed, Jack sat with Emma on the porch swing that had become their evening ritual spot. The September air held the first hint of autumn crispness, neighborhood children playing in nearby yards as twilight approached. "Daddy," Emma said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking about something." Jack had learned that this particular tone usually preceded a question he wasn't fully prepared to answer. "What's on your mind?" "When I was at Sunrise Haven, some kids got adopted by new families. They got new last names." "That's often how adoption works," Jack agreed carefully. Emma fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. "But I'm not adopted. I'm just found. So why is my last name still Parker? Shouldn't it be Wilson like yours?" The question caught Jack by surprise. In the whirlwind of gaining custody and establishing their new life, he hadn't considered this detail. Emma's birth certificate listed her as Emma Olivia Parker, with no father named. "Would you like it to be Wilson?" he asked. Emma nodded emphatically. "Then everyone would know you're really my dad, for real and official." "That can be arranged," Jack said, touched by her certainty. "We'd need to fill out some papers, talk to a judge, but it's definitely possible." Emma leaned against him, satisfied. "Good, because Tommy at school said you might not be my real dad because we have different last names." Jack felt a flash of irritation at this unknown Tommy, quickly replaced by understanding. Children were naturally curious about differences. Names are important, he agreed, but they're not what makes a family real. What makes us family is that we love each other and take care of each other no matter what. Emma considered this. Like how you came to find me even though you didn't know about me before? Exactly like that. This seemed to satisfy her. They swung in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Emma spoke again. Can we invite Ms. Eleanor for dinner tomorrow? She said she'd teach me how to make her special cookies. Of course. Jack had developed immense appreciation for Eleanor Matthews, whose no-nonsense approach to both baking and life had provided stability during their adjustment period. She'd become part of their makeshift family, along with Martha from Sunrise Haven, who now worked at a legitimate children's center, and occasionally Agent Keller. As darkness fell, they moved inside for Emma's bedtime routine, bath, story, the careful arrangement and rearrangement of stuffed animals, and finally prayers. This last element had been Emma's request, something Olivia had apparently started with her. God bless Daddy and Ms. Eleanor and Agent Keller, Emma recited, eyes closed and hands folded, and please tell Mommy I'm okay now, so she doesn't worry. Amen. Jack tucked the blankets around her, his throat tight. Good night, sweetheart. Daddy? Emma's voice stopped him at the door. Are you happy now? The question, simple yet profound, made Jack pause. 6 months ago, he'd been existing rather than living, a solitary man visiting a grave each Sunday out of duty and regret. Now, despite the chaos and adjustment, despite the tragedy that had brought them together, he felt something he'd thought lost forever. Yes, he answered honestly. I'm very happy. Emma nodded, satisfied. Me too. Mommy would be happy we found each other. She would, Jack agreed softly. She'd be very proud of you. And of you, Emma added, yawning, for being a good daddy even though you didn't practice before. Jack smiled at her phrasing. I'm still learning. You're doing okay, she mumbled, eyes drifting closed. Just need more practice with braids. Long after Emma had fallen asleep, Jack sat on the front porch, gazing at the stars emerging in the clear Virginia sky. The same stars Olivia had once pointed out to him during their short marriage, naming constellations with her characteristic blend of scientific precision and wonder. He thought about the unlikely path that had led him here. A chance encounter at a cemetery, a child's whispered, "Daddy," a journey through danger and corruption to this moment of hard-won peace. He thought about Olivia, whose courage and foresight had saved their daughter even when she couldn't save herself. A soft breeze stirred the wind chimes Eleanor had insisted on hanging. Every proper home needs music from the wind, she'd declared. The gentle tinkling seemed to underscore the rightness of this moment, this place, this new life they were building. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Emma's ongoing therapy, the legal process to change her surname, the ordinary complications of raising a child as a single father. But for the first time in years, Jack faced the future with something beyond resignation or duty. He faced it with hope. Inside, Emma slept peacefully, safe in the knowledge that her father had found her and would always find her, no matter what. Outside, Jack Wilson watched over their home, a former soldier who had discovered that the greatest battle and the greatest victory of his life had nothing to do with war. It had everything to do with love. The wind chimes sang softly in the darkness, a gentle lullaby for father and daughter, two souls who had found each other against impossible odds, brought together by a mother's love and a child's unshakable faith that her father would come for her. And he had. Sometimes the greatest treasures are found in the darkest places, and sometimes a little girl's tears can wash away years of pain and bring a broken soldier back to life. Dear friends, in a world that often forgets the value of second chances, Jack and Emma's story reminds us that it's never too late to find purpose. Many of us understand loss, the empty chairs at our tables, the silence in once bustling homes. We've weathered careers, raised families, and sometimes wondered, what remains for us now? Jack Wilson was merely existing, visiting a grave each Sunday out of duty, until fate placed a 6-year-old girl in his path who called him Daddy. Through protecting Emma, this broken soldier discovered that his greatest mission wasn't overseas, but in becoming the father he never thought he'd be. For those of us who feel our most meaningful days are behind us, this story whispers hope. Whether it's reconnecting with a estranged family, mentoring a child who needs guidance, or finding new purpose in retirement, our capacity to love and protect others doesn't diminish with age. It deepens. Like Eleanor, who became Emma's honorary grandmother, we all have wisdom and love still to give. What unexpected second chance has changed your life when you thought your story was already written? Or, if you could speak to your younger self about finding purpose later in life, what would you say? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be the very light someone else needs today.